The morning sun streamed through the stained glass windows of St. Mary's Cathedral in downtown Chicago, casting rainbow patterns across the marble floor. Emma Collins stood before the ornate mirror in the bridal suite, her hands trembling as she adjusted her simple pearl necklace. The dress was beautiful but modest, purchased from a boutique downtown rather than a designer salon. Everything about today was deliberately understated. She caught her reflection and smiled nervously. After 3 years of living as an ordinary museum curator, today felt like the culmination of the greatest love story she had ever known. Marcus Kane, brilliant tech entrepreneur and the man who had captured her heart completely, was waiting for her at the altar. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she was, heiress to a $12 billion media empire, about to marry a man who thought she worked for $35,000 a year, cataloging ancient artifacts. Her grandfather William's test had seemed reasonable when it began. Live as a regular person. Find someone who loves Emma Collins, the woman, not Emma Collins, the billionaire. Prove that real love exists beyond bank accounts and board meetings. Emma, sweetheart, you look radiant. Sarah Mitchell, her cousin and maid of honor, entered the room wearing a soft blue dress. Sarah knew the truth about Emma's identity, though she had opposed the deception from the beginning. Are you ready for this? Emma nodded, though butterflies danced in her stomach. I've never been more sure of anything. Marcus loves me for who I am, not what I have. Through the door, she could hear the gentle murmur of guests taking their seats. It was a small wedding, just 50 people. Marcus had suggested they keep it intimate, which Emma had appreciated. She preferred meaningful connections over grand spectacles anyway. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Jake Rodriguez, her best friend and investigative journalist, peeked his head around the door. The groom's getting antsy out there. Good antsy, not running away antsy. Emma laughed. Jake had been her constant companion through the past 3 years, the only friend who knew her real identity. He had supported her grandfather's test, understanding the importance of finding authentic love in a world where her wealth made genuine relationships nearly impossible. Is he nervous? Emma asked. Like a cat in a thunderstorm, Jake grinned. But he keeps talking about how lucky he is. Says you're the best thing that ever happened to him. Emma's heart swelled. This was why the test mattered. Marcus had fallen in love with her mind, her passion for art history, her gentle spirit, not her trust fund. The wedding march began to play, its familiar melody echoing through the cathedral. Emma took a deep breath and linked arms with Jake, who would walk her down the aisle since her parents had died in a car accident when she was 16. Her grandfather waited in the front pew, his knowing eyes filled with pride. As they began their procession, Emma saw Marcus standing at the altar in a perfectly tailored navy suit. He looked handsome and confident, though she noticed his hands fidgeting at his sides. Next to him stood his business partner and best man, a woman named Victoria Sterling, who ran a venture capital firm. Emma had always felt slightly uncomfortable around Victoria, sensing an undercurrent of ambition that seemed to overshadow everything else. The guests smiled as Emma passed, their faces warm with anticipation. She recognized colleagues from the museum, friends from graduate school, and Marcus's business associates. Everything was perfect. She reached the altar and Jake kissed her cheek before taking his seat. Marcus took her hands, his blue eyes bright with emotion. The minister, Father O'Brien, began the ceremony with words about love, commitment, and the sacred bond of marriage. We are gathered here today to witness the union of Emma Collins and Marcus Kane, Father O'Brien announced. Marriage is not just the joining of two people, but the creation of a partnership that will weather all storms. Emma felt tears of joy gathering in her eyes. After years of wondering if anyone could love her for herself, she had found her answer. Marcus squeezed her hands gently, and she squeezed back. Do you, Marcus Kane, take Emma Collins to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, as long as you both shall live? The moment stretched. Emma expected an immediate yes, but Marcus hesitated. His eyes flickered to Victoria, then back to Emma. Something cold passed across his features. I'm sorry, Marcus said quietly. I can't do this. The words hit Emma like a physical blow. The cathedral fell silent, except for a few gasps from the congregation. Marcus, Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. He stepped back, releasing her hands. Emma, you're a wonderful person. Kind, intelligent, beautiful. But I need more than that. I need a partner who can help me build something extraordinary. Someone with connections, with resources, with real ambition. Emma felt the world tilting around her. What are you saying? Victoria stepped forward, her hand sliding possessively onto Marcus's arm. He's saying he chooses me, darling. We're announcing our partnership today, business and personal. The revelation crashed over Emma like a tsunami. She looked at Marcus, searching his face for any sign of the man who had whispered sweet words of love just hours before. Instead, she saw cold calculation. You're choosing her? Emma managed to ask. Victoria understands my world, Marcus said, his voice gaining strength. She brings $50 million in funding to my company. She has connections to investors I could never reach on my own. Together, we can build an empire. Emma's legs nearly gave out. Jake was already moving from his seat, ready to catch her if she fell. The photographer continued snapping pictures, documenting what was surely the most humiliating moment of her life. I loved you, Emma whispered. And I cared for you, Marcus replied. But caring doesn't close deals. It doesn't scale startups. I need a queen, not a librarian. The cruelty of his words cut deep. Around them, wedding guests pulled out phones, already posting videos to social media. Emma could see the hashtag forming, #AltarFail. Without another word, Emma turned and walked back down the aisle, her chin held high despite the devastation coursing through her veins. Jake fell into step beside her, his jaw clenched with fury. Sarah gathered Emma's train, and together they escorted her from the cathedral. As the heavy doors closed behind them, Emma realized that Marcus Kane had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He had chosen ambition over love, calculation over connection. What he didn't know was that the quiet museum curator he had just publicly humiliated controlled more wealth and power than he could ever imagine. The test was over, and Marcus had failed spectacularly. The black Mercedes glided through the gates of the Collins estate in Lake Forest, 40 minutes north of Chicago. Emma sat in stunned silence as familiar landmarks passed by. Ancient oak trees lined the private road, their branches forming a canopy overhead. This was home, though she hadn't lived here in 3 years. Jake sat beside her, his reporter's instincts already working. Emma, I know you're hurting, but we need to talk about what happens next. Those videos are already going viral. Emma nodded numbly. She could imagine the comments, the memes, the cruel jokes at her expense. The internet loved a good public humiliation, especially when it involved love and betrayal. The estate came into view, a sprawling Georgian mansion that had housed 3 generations of the Collins family. Manicured gardens stretched in every direction, and a fountain sparkled in the afternoon sun. This was the world Emma had left behind to find authentic love. Instead, she had found authentic heartbreak. William Collins waited on the front steps, his silver hair perfectly styled, despite his 72 years. He had built Collins Media from a single newspaper into a global empire encompassing television networks, streaming platforms, and digital publications. He was also the only family Emma had left, and the only person who truly understood the weight of their family legacy. Grandfather, Emma said as she stepped from the car, still wearing her wedding dress. William embraced her gently. My dear girl, I'm so sorry it ended this way. They walked into the grand foyer, past portraits of Collins family patriarchs who had each contributed to the media dynasty. Emma had grown up among these images, understanding from an early age that she was destined for something greater than ordinary life. The library was Emma's favorite room, floor-to-ceiling mahogany shelves filled with first-edition books and family documents. William gestured for her to sit in a leather chair beside the fireplace, while Jake settled nearby. The test is over, William said without preamble. Marcus Kane showed his true character today. He chose money and status over love and loyalty. Emma felt tears threatening again. I really thought he loved me, grandfather. For 3 years, I believed we had something real. Perhaps you did, for a time, William replied gently. But when faced with a choice between his heart and his ambition, he revealed his priorities. Sarah entered the room carrying a tray of tea, her expression sympathetic but resolute. As Emma's cousin and a vice president at Collins Media, Sarah had access to information that might prove relevant. Emma, Sarah said carefully, there's something you need to know about today. Marcus didn't just spontaneously choose Victoria. They've been planning this for months. The words hit Emma like a second betrayal. What do you mean? Jake leaned forward, his investigative instincts engaged. Sarah, what kind of planning? Victoria Sterling has been feeding Marcus information about Emma's real identity, Sarah explained. Not everything, but enough to make him suspicious. They've been positioning themselves for this moment. Emma felt the room spinning. He knew? About my family? Suspected, William corrected. Victoria conducted research into our family after Marcus began dating you. She discovered hints of your true identity, but not the full scope of your inheritance. Quan. The cruelty of the situation became clear. Marcus hadn't just chosen ambition over love. He had calculated that Victoria's confirmed $50 million was worth more than Emma's uncertain connection to wealth. Show her the rest, William instructed Sarah. Sarah opened a laptop and turned the screen toward Emma. Social media feeds showed video after video of the altar scene, but the comments were evolving beyond simple mockery. Someone had posted a follow-up video identifying Emma as a Collins, though they incorrectly assumed she was a distant relative seeking to marry into money. They think I'm a gold digger, Emma realized. They think I was trying to trap Marcus for his money. Let them think what they want, William said firmly. Tomorrow the truth comes out. Sarah, activate the succession plan. Sarah nodded and opened a leather portfolio. Inside were documents that would change everything. Stock certificates, proxy statements, and legal papers that would officially transfer control of Collins Media to Emma. 51% controlling interest, William explained. Effective immediately. You are now the majority owner and chief executive officer of Collins Media Corporation. Emma stared at the documents. The magnitude of what she was inheriting hit her fully for the first time. $12 billion in assets. 30,000 employees worldwide. The power to shape public opinion and influence global conversations. Are you ready for this? William asked. Because Marcus Kane and Victoria Sterling have declared war on you, whether they realize it or not. They've humiliated you publicly, assuming you have no power to respond. Emma thought about Marcus's words at the altar. He needed a queen, not a librarian. Well, he was about to discover that he had just rejected the most powerful media heiress in America. What's our first move? Emma asked, her voice steadying. Jake grinned. Now that's the Emma I know. Ready to show them what real power looks like? William reached for another folder. Marcus Kane's startup is called Nexus Technologies. They're developing virtual reality platforms for corporate training. Promising technology, but they need significant funding to scale. And Victoria's venture capital firm is providing that funding, Emma realized. Partially, Sarah added. They still need additional investors. Major investors, the kind that read our publications and watch our networks. Emma began to see the strategy forming. Collins Media had the power to make or break reputations in the business world. Their financial news network was watched by every major investor in America. Their business magazine was required reading for anyone serious about corporate success. We're not going to destroy them out of spite, Emma said, her voice growing stronger. We're going to let them destroy themselves by exposing who they really are. William smiled proudly. Now you're thinking like a Collins. As evening fell over the estate, Emma stood in her childhood bedroom, finally out of her wedding dress. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw someone different than the woman who had walked down the aisle that morning. The naive hope was gone, replaced by steely determination. Marcus had wanted a queen. Tomorrow he would meet one. But she wouldn't be standing beside him. She would be standing opposite him, ready for battle. The Collins Media headquarters occupied 47 floors of a gleaming tower in downtown Chicago's financial district. Emma stood in the elevator as it rose to the executive level, watching the city shrink below her. She wore a sharp charcoal suit and carried herself with newfound authority. The transformation from museum curator to media mogul was remarkable, but it felt natural, as if she were finally stepping into her true identity. The elevator opened directly into the CEO's office, a sprawling space with panoramic views of Lake Michigan. The desk had belonged to her great-grandfather, who founded the company in 1925. 3 generations of Collins men had sat behind that mahogany surface, and now it was her turn. Sarah waited with a stack of briefing documents and a steaming cup of coffee. The board meeting is in 30 minutes. They're excited to meet their new leader, though I suspect some are nervous about the transition. Emma nodded, settling into the leather chair. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. What's the media response to yesterday's announcement? Explosive, Sarah replied, opening her tablet. Wall Street Journal led with Collins' dynasty continues. Forbes called it the most significant media succession in decades. Stock price is up 12% since markets opened. Emma scanned the headlines. The business world was fascinated by her story, the hidden heiress who had emerged from obscurity to claim one of America's most powerful media companies. What they didn't know yet was that she had a very personal reason for accepting this responsibility. And Marcus Kane's reaction? Sarah's expression darkened. Radio silence from him personally, but Victoria Sterling issued a statement calling your appointment a publicity stunt. She suggested the board made an emotional decision rather than a strategic one. Emma felt a familiar fire building in her chest. Victoria was already trying to undermine her credibility, painting her as an unqualified neophyte trading on family connections. It was exactly the kind of attack Emma had expected. Schedule a meeting with our investigative team, Emma instructed. I want comprehensive background reports on both Marcus Kane and Victoria Sterling. Business practices, personal relationships, financial history, everything. Jake knocked on the office door and entered with his laptop. As an investigative journalist, he had taken a leave of absence from his newspaper to help Emma navigate the transition. I've been monitoring social media coverage of the wedding situation. It's getting nasty. He turned his screen toward Emma. The hashtag #AlterFail had spawned dozens of memes and reaction videos, but the narrative was shifting. Someone had leaked additional details about Emma's identity, and comment sections were filling with speculation about her motives. They're painting you as a scheming gold digger who finally got caught, Jake explained. Victoria's PR team is definitely coordinating this campaign. Emma studied the comments. The cruelty of strangers was breathtaking, but she had expected this response. Victoria was a master manipulator who understood how to weaponize public opinion. Let them think what they want for now, Emma said. We'll control the narrative when we're ready. The board meeting took place in the company's formal conference room, 30 feet of polished granite surrounded by portraits of media luminaries. 12 directors sat around the table, men and women who had guided Collins Media through decades of growth and evolution. Emma entered the room with confidence, taking her seat at the head of the table. These people had known her since childhood, watching her grow up at company events and family gatherings. But today marked her first appearance as their leader. Good morning, Emma began. I know this transition feels sudden, but I want you to understand my vision for our company's future. She activated the room's presentation system, displaying a slide that showed Collins Media's current market position. We own 3 television networks, 2 streaming platforms, 5 major publications, and digital properties reaching 200 million people monthly. That gives us unprecedented power to shape conversations and influence decisions. The board members nodded, familiar with these statistics. What they didn't know was how Emma planned to use that influence. Our investigative division has always prided itself on exposing corruption and holding powerful people accountable, Emma continued. I want to expand that mission. We're going to launch a new series called Power and Accountability, focusing on business leaders who abuse their positions. Margaret Chen, the board's senior member, raised her hand. Emma, that sounds like excellent journalism, but what's driving this particular focus? Emma had anticipated this question. The business world is filled with people who prioritize personal gain over ethical behavior. Our audience deserves to understand how decisions are made in corporate America, especially when those decisions affect ordinary people. It was a truthful answer, though not the complete truth. Emma wasn't ready to reveal that Marcus Kane and Victoria Sterling would be among the first subjects of investigation. After the meeting, Emma returned to her office to find Jake reviewing financial documents spread across her desk. His expression was grim. I've been digging into Nexus Technologies, he said. Marcus's company is in worse shape than anyone realizes. They've burned through their initial funding and haven't hit any of their development milestones. Emma leaned over the papers, recognizing the signs of a struggling startup. How long before they run out of money? 6 months, maybe less. That's why the partnership with Victoria was so crucial. Her $50 million investment was supposed to carry them through product launch. Emma felt a strategy forming. What happens if that funding disappears? Company fails. Marcus loses everything. All those employees he's hired get laid off. The human cost gave Emma pause. She had no desire to hurt innocent people who depended on Nexus Technologies for their livelihoods. But Marcus and Victoria had made their choice when they decided to humiliate her publicly. Keep monitoring their situation, Emma instructed. I want to understand their vulnerabilities before we make any moves. As afternoon turned to evening, Emma stood at her office windows watching the city lights come alive. Somewhere out there, Marcus and Victoria were celebrating their victory, believing they had outsmarted a naive museum curator. They had no idea they were about to face the full power of the Collins media empire. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. When she opened it, her blood ran cold. Enjoying your little promotion? Too bad it won't last. Some secrets are too big to stay buried. A friend. Emma stared at the message, her mind racing. What secrets could they possibly have discovered? Her life had been deliberately ordinary for the past 3 years, carefully constructed to avoid exactly this kind of threat. She forwarded the message to Jake and Sarah, then walked to her grandfather's portrait hanging on the office wall. William Collins had built this empire through intelligence, determination, and strategic thinking. He had also taught her that real power came not from wealth, but from the courage to use that wealth responsibly. Marcus Kane had called her a librarian with contempt, as if caring for knowledge and history was somehow beneath him. Tomorrow he would begin to learn that librarians were experts at research, investigation, and uncovering the truth. The war had begun, and Emma Collins was ready to fight. Emma arrived at the office early the next morning to find Jake already waiting with coffee and a stack of newspapers. The overnight news cycle had been brutal, filled with speculation about her capabilities and motives. Several gossip websites had published unflattering photos from her college years, clearly part of Victoria's coordinated campaign. They're trying to paint you as unstable, Jake said, spreading the papers across her desk. Look at these headlines. Question marks surround media heiress. Sources close to Collins family express concerns. It's all anonymous sourcing and innuendo. Emma scanned the articles, recognizing the classic character assassination playbook. Plant doubts about competence, suggest hidden instability, imply that success was unearned. Victoria Sterling was very good at her job. Any response from Marcus directly? Emma asked. Still nothing. He's letting Victoria handle the media strategy while he focuses on business operations. Emma's phone rang. Sarah's voice was tense when she answered. Emma, you need to see this. Victoria just announced a press conference for this afternoon. She's calling it Setting the Record Straight. The implication was clear. Victoria planned to escalate their conflict into open warfare, probably revealing whatever secrets she thought she had discovered about Emma's identity or past. Where's the press conference? Emma asked. Downtown at the Palmer House. She's invited every major business reporter in Chicago. Emma felt her pulse quicken. Victoria was making a serious mistake by going public with personal attacks, but the immediate damage could be significant if she had genuinely damaging information. Schedule our own press conference for tomorrow morning, Emma decided. Same hotel, same room, and get our investigative team on the phone. It's time to accelerate our research. Within an hour, Emma sat in the secure conference room with her 3 best investigative reporters. Tom Bradley had spent 20 years exposing corporate fraud. Lisa Parks specialized in financial crimes. David Wilson focused on political corruption. Together, they form one of the most respected investigative units in American journalism. We need comprehensive background on Victoria Sterling and Marcus Kane, Emma began. Business practices, personal relationships, financial irregularities. Anything that shows a pattern of unethical behavior. Tom raised his hand. Emma, I have to ask, is this about the wedding situation? Because if we're using company resources for personal vendettas, that's a problem. Emma had expected this challenge. Tom, you're absolutely right to ask, but this isn't personal revenge. Victoria Sterling has made several public statements questioning my fitness to lead this company. She's positioning herself as a credible critic of our family's business practices. I think our audience deserves to understand her qualifications to make such judgments. It was a carefully crafted answer that skirted the edge of truth without crossing into outright deception. Emma was indeed seeking justice for personal wrongs, but Victoria's public attacks had made the conflict legitimately newsworthy. Lisa opened her laptop. I can tell you right now that Victoria's venture capital firm has some interesting investment patterns. She specializes in taking controlling stakes in struggling companies, then stripping their assets. What do you mean? Emma asked. She finds promising startups that hit rough patches, offers emergency funding in exchange for majority control, then sells off their intellectual property to larger companies. The founders get pushed out, employees get laid off, but Victoria makes substantial profits. Emma felt pieces clicking into place. Is that what she's planning with Nexus Technologies? It fits the pattern, David added. Marcus Kane's company has valuable virtual reality patents, but they're burning cash. Victoria's $50 million gives her leverage to force changes if the company doesn't meet performance targets. Tom was taking notes furiously. This could be a legitimate business story regardless of personal connections. Venture capitalists uses predatory practices to acquire valuable assets. We've covered similar situations before. Emma nodded. Exactly. And if Marcus Kane is knowingly participating in this scheme, our audience should understand his business ethics. At 3 o'clock, Emma watched Victoria's press conference from her office, surrounded by her senior staff. Victoria looked polished and confident in a navy blue suit, standing behind a podium at the Palmer House, with Chicago's business media assembled before her. Ladies and gentlemen, Victoria began, I've called this conference to address serious concerns about recent developments at Collins Media Corporation. Emma felt her stomach tighten. Here it comes. Emma Collins is undoubtedly intelligent and well-educated, Victoria continued, but intelligence alone doesn't qualify someone to run a $12 billion company. Her grandfather's decision to transfer control appears to be based on family loyalty rather than business competence. The reporters scribbled notes, but Emma relaxed slightly. This was generic criticism, not devastating revelation. Furthermore, Victoria said, I have concerns about Miss Collins's emotional stability following recent personal disappointments. Leading a major corporation requires steady judgment and rational decision-making. I question whether someone who has suffered such public humiliation can maintain the objectivity necessary for effective leadership. Jake muttered an expletive under his breath. Victoria was weaponizing Emma's heartbreak, suggesting that emotional pain made her unfit for corporate responsibility. I call on the Collins Media Board of Directors to reconsider this hasty succession plan, Victoria concluded. The company's shareholders, employees, and audience deserve leadership based on merit, not family connections. The press conference lasted 30 minutes, with Victoria skillfully deflecting questions about her own business practices while maintaining focus on Emma's alleged shortcomings. It was a masterful performance that would generate headlines and social media debate. She's good, Sarah admitted grudgingly. Evil, but good at what she does. Emma stood and walked to her windows, looking out at the city below. Victoria had just made a critical error by attacking Emma's emotional state. That opened the door for Emma to respond not just as a business leader, but as a woman defending herself against unfair personal attacks. Schedule that press conference for tomorrow at 10 a.m., Emma said, and make sure our investigative team has preliminary findings ready by tonight. Jake grinned. What are you planning? Victoria wants to question my qualifications, Emma replied. Fine, let's examine hers. That evening, Emma worked late in her office, reviewing the initial research on Victoria's business practices. The pattern was clear and disturbing. Victoria Sterling specialized in corporate vulture capitalism, using emergency funding to gain control of vulnerable companies, then dismantling them for profit. The most damaging case involved a medical device startup that had developed breakthrough technology for treating diabetes. When the company hit regulatory delays, Victoria offered emergency funding in exchange for majority control. Once she gained power, she sold the patents to a pharmaceutical giant and laid off the entire research team. The technology was shelved to protect existing drug sales, and diabetic patients lost access to potentially life-saving innovation. Emma felt sick reading the details. This wasn't just aggressive business practice. It was actively harmful to society prioritizing financial gain over human welfare. Her phone buzzed with another anonymous text. Tomorrow's press conference is a mistake. Some fights you can't win. Last warning. Emma stared at the message, her resolve hardening. Victoria Sterling thought intimidation would work because she had never faced anyone with Emma's resources and determination. Tomorrow the world would see what happened when a predatory capitalist targeted the wrong victim. The fight was just beginning, and Emma Collins was done playing defense. The Palmer House ballroom was packed with reporters, cameras, and curious observers when Emma took the podium at exactly 10 a.m. She wore a burgundy suit that projected both power and femininity, her dark hair pulled back in a style that emphasized her determined expression. Behind her stood a large screen displaying the Collins Media logo. "Good morning," Emma began, her voice clear and confident. "I called this conference to address yesterday's allegations about my fitness to lead Collins Media Corporation." The room was silent except for the soft clicking of camera shutters. Emma had their complete attention. "Victoria Sterling questioned my qualifications based on family connections rather than merit. She suggested that recent personal events have compromised my judgment. These are serious accusations that deserve a thorough response." Emma clicked a remote, and the screen behind her displayed her academic credentials. "I graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern University with a degree in art history and business administration. I earned my PhD from University of Chicago, focusing on media archaeology and information preservation. For the past 3 years, I've worked as a senior curator at the Chicago Museum of Contemporary Art, managing million-dollar acquisitions and developing digital preservation programs." The reporters took notes, but Emma could see some eye-rolling. Academic achievements were impressive, but running a major corporation required different skills. "More importantly," Emma continued, "I've spent the last decade studying how information moves through society, how narratives shape public opinion, and how media organizations influence democratic discourse. That's exactly the expertise Collins Media needs as we navigate an increasingly complex information landscape." She clicked again, and the screen showed Collins Media's stock performance over the past week. The price had risen steadily since her appointment was announced. "Our shareholders seem confident in my leadership. Stock price is up 18% since I took control. Our advertising revenue has increased 12% as clients respond positively to our new strategic direction." Emma paused, letting the numbers sink in. Financial performance was the ultimate measure of corporate leadership, and the market was clearly endorsing her appointment. "Now let me address Miss Sterling's concerns about my emotional stability," Emma said, her tone sharpening. "She suggests that personal disappointment has compromised my judgment. I find this argument particularly interesting coming from someone who has built her career on exploiting other people's disappointments." The room stirred. Emma was going on the offensive. "Our investigative team has examined Miss Sterling's business practices over the past 5 years. We've discovered a disturbing pattern of predatory behavior that raises serious questions about her own ethical judgment." Emma clicked the remote again. The screen displayed a timeline showing Victoria's major investments, with highlighted sections indicating companies that were subsequently dismantled. In 2019, Sterling Ventures provided emergency funding to MedTech Innovations, a startup developing revolutionary diabetes treatment technology. Once Miss Sterling gained controlling interest, she sold the patents to PharmaCorp International and laid off the entire research team. The breakthrough technology was shelved to protect existing drug sales, denying diabetic patients access to potentially life-saving innovation. Reporters began typing furiously. This was exactly the kind of business scandal that generated headlines and public outrage. In 2021, she repeated this pattern with Green Energy Solutions, a solar panel manufacturer that had developed more efficient photovoltaic cells. Emergency funding, controlling interest, patent sale to fossil fuel companies, research discontinued. Emma let the implications hang in the air. Victoria Sterling wasn't just a ruthless capitalist. She was actively harmful to technological progress and human welfare. "The pattern is clear and consistent," Emma continued. "Miss Sterling identifies vulnerable companies with valuable intellectual property, uses emergency funding to gain control, then strips assets for maximum profit regardless of social consequences. She's not building anything. She's a corporate vulture." The room erupted with questions, but Emma raised her hand for silence. I bring this up not to engage in personal attacks, but to provide context for Miss Sterling's criticism of my leadership. A woman who has spent her career dismantling innovative companies and firing dedicated employees is questioning my fitness to run a media organization dedicated to truth and accountability. The irony is breathtaking. Emma felt adrenaline coursing through her veins. This was what real power felt like. Not inherited wealth or family connections, but the ability to expose truth and demand justice. Finally, I want to address the elephant in the room, Emma said, her voice softening slightly. Yes, I was recently left at the altar in a very public and humiliating way. Miss Sterling is correct that this was personally devastating. She paused, making eye contact with reporters around the room. This was the moment that would define her public image going forward. But I would argue that experiencing betrayal and public humiliation has actually strengthened my leadership abilities. I now understand viscerally how it feels when powerful people prioritize personal gain over human dignity. I've experienced firsthand what happens when someone you trust reveals their true character under pressure. Emma's voice grew stronger. These experiences haven't made me unstable. They've made me more committed to using Collins Media's platform to expose exactly the kind of predatory behavior that Miss Sterling represents. The press conference continued for another 20 minutes, with Emma fielding questions about her business plans, corporate strategy, and personal motivations. She answered each query with confidence and intelligence, demonstrating the kind of thoughtful leadership that her critics claimed she lacked. As reporters filed out, Jake approached the podium with a satisfied expression. That was beautiful. You turned their attack into your strength. Emma nodded, but she knew the real battle was just beginning. Victoria Sterling wouldn't retreat quietly after being publicly exposed. The next counterattack would be more vicious and personal. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Well played, but this isn't over. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Emma showed the message to Jake, who frowned. We need to take these threats seriously. Victoria clearly has resources beyond what we've discovered. Let her come, Emma replied. I'm done being afraid of bullies who think money and intimidation can silence the truth. As they left the Palmer house, Emma felt a profound shift in her identity. She was no longer the heartbroken bride who had been publicly humiliated. She was Emma Collins, CEO of Collins Media Corporation, and she was fighting for something much larger than personal revenge. She was fighting for the principle that truth and accountability mattered more than wealth and power, and she was just getting started. Emma thought she had gained the upper hand after exposing Victoria's predatory business practices, but the celebration was short-lived. 3 days after her press conference, Jake burst into her office with his laptop and a grim expression. Emma, we have a major problem, he said, setting his computer on her desk. I've been monitoring social media and news outlets like you asked. Someone just leaked financial documents that make you look terrible. Emma's stomach dropped as she leaned over the screen. A business blog called Corporate Truth had published what appeared to be internal Collins Media financial statements showing massive losses, questionable accounting practices, and evidence of nepotism in executive hiring. These numbers suggest the company is in serious financial trouble, Jake explained. According to these documents, Collins Media has been hemorrhaging money for months, covering losses through creative accounting. It makes your appointment look like a desperate attempt to use family connections to save a failing business. Emma studied the documents carefully. They looked authentic, complete with official letterheads and financial signatures. But something felt wrong about the timing and specific details. Jake, these numbers don't match what I've seen in our actual financial reports. Our company is profitable and growing. These documents are sophisticated forgeries. Can you prove that? Jake asked urgently. Because every major business news outlet is picking up this story. Our stock price just dropped 15% in after-hours trading. Emma felt panic rising in her chest. Victoria Sterling was escalating their conflict in ways she hadn't anticipated. Forged financial documents could destroy Collins Media's reputation and shareholder confidence within days. Her assistant knocked and entered without waiting for permission. Ms. Collins, you have an emergency call from the Securities and Exchange Commission. They want to discuss these financial allegations immediately. Emma's hands trembled as she reached for the phone. A federal investigation could freeze company assets, trigger massive employee layoffs, and destroy everything her family had built over 3 generations. "This is Emma Collins," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Ms. Collins, this is Director Patricia Hamilton from the SEC's Enforcement Division. We've received allegations of financial irregularities at Collins Media Corporation. We need to schedule an immediate meeting to discuss these concerns." Emma felt the world spinning around her. Victoria wasn't just attacking her reputation. She was weaponizing federal regulators to destroy the company itself. "Director Hamilton, I can assure you that our financial reporting is completely accurate. These leaked documents appear to be sophisticated forgeries designed to manipulate our stock price." "That's certainly possible," Hamilton replied carefully. "But we have to investigate all credible allegations of securities fraud. Can you be in our Chicago office tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.? After ending the call, Emma slumped in her chair. Within hours, Victoria had managed to trigger a federal investigation, crash their stock price, and put Emma on the defensive. It was a masterful attack that leveraged government authority to achieve private objectives. "This is really bad," Jake said quietly. "Even if we prove the documents are fake, the investigation process will take months. The damage to your reputation and the company's value could be irreversible." Emma's phone rang again. This time it was her grandfather, his voice tight with concern. "Emma, I'm seeing reports about SEC investigations and financial irregularities. What's happening?" Emma explained the situation while William listened in silence. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Victoria Sterling is more dangerous than we realized," he finally said. "She's not just fighting you for business advantage. She's trying to destroy our entire family legacy. Grandfather, what if she succeeds? What if these forged documents convince the SEC that we're actually committing fraud?" "Then we fight back with everything we have," William replied firmly. "But Emma, there's something I haven't told you about Victoria Sterling, something I discovered when she first started dating Marcus." Emma felt a chill. What kind of something? Victoria Sterling isn't her real name. She was born Victoria Kowalski in Detroit, daughter of a convicted embezzler. She changed her identity when she moved to Chicago and created an entirely fictional background to support her venture capital career. Emma's mind raced. "Do you have proof of this? Documented evidence, birth certificates, court records, even photographs?" "I hired investigators to research anyone who got close to our family, but I never shared this information because I thought the relationship with Marcus would end naturally." Emma felt hope stirring. "Grandfather, if Victoria is operating under a false identity, that could invalidate her business licenses, investment certifications, everything. She could face federal charges for identity fraud." "Exactly. But Emma, using this information makes us as ruthless as she is. Once we cross that line, there's no going back to the moral high ground." Emma stared out her office windows at the city below. Somewhere out there, Victoria Sterling was probably celebrating her successful attack on Collins Media. She had used forged documents to trigger a federal investigation that could destroy everything Emma's family had built. The choice was clear. Emma could maintain her ethical principles and possibly watch her family's empire crumble, or she could fight fire with fire and expose Victoria's fraudulent identity. "Send me everything you have on Victoria Kowalski," Emma said quietly. "If she wants to play dirty, she's about to learn that Collins Media has resources she can't imagine." "Are you sure about this?" William asked. Emma thought about Marcus standing at the altar, choosing ambition over love. She thought about Victoria's predatory business practices, the innovative companies she had destroyed, the employees she had fired. She thought about the forged documents designed to frame her family for crimes they hadn't committed. "Victoria Sterling started this war by attacking innocent people," Emma said, her voice hardening. "She's about to discover what happens when you target the wrong family." As evening fell, Emma worked with Jake to prepare their counterattack. Tomorrow she would face federal investigators who might destroy her company based on fabricated evidence. But tomorrow Victoria Sterling would also face the complete exposure of her fraudulent identity and criminal background. The gloves were off and Emma Collins was ready to fight for everything that mattered to her. Emma spent a sleepless night preparing for the SEC meeting, reviewing legitimate financial documents, and consulting with the company's top attorneys. At 9 a.m. sharp, she sat across from Director Patricia Hamilton in a sterile government conference room, flanked by 2 lawyers and Jake, who was there as her media advisor. Ms. Collins, Director Hamilton began, we've conducted a preliminary review of the leaked documents. Our forensic accountants have identified several irregularities that suggest these materials may be fabricated. Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her. You mean they're forgeries? The metadata shows signs of digital manipulation, and certain formatting inconsistencies suggest the documents were created recently rather than generated by your accounting systems over time. Emma's attorney, Robert Chen, leaned forward. Director Hamilton, this appears to be a clear case of market manipulation through the dissemination of false information. Will the SEC be investigating the source of these forgeries? Absolutely. Securities fraud is a serious federal crime, regardless of who commits it. We're also issuing a public statement clarifying that Collins Media Corporation is not under investigation for financial irregularities. As they left the federal building, Emma felt triumphant. Victoria's attack had backfired spectacularly. Not only had the SEC cleared Collins Media, but they were now investigating Victoria for securities fraud. This is perfect, Jake said as they walked to their car. Victoria overplayed her hand. She's about to face federal criminal charges while you come out looking like the victim of a malicious attack. Emma's phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. Stock price recovering rapidly, up 12% since SEC statement. Board wants to schedule celebration lunch. For the first time in days, Emma allowed herself to smile. Victoria Sterling had made a critical error by involving federal authorities. The SEC's investigation would expose her role in creating the forged documents, leading to criminal charges that could destroy her career and send her to prison. Back at Collins Media headquarters, Emma called an all-hands meeting to address employee concerns about the company's stability. The main auditorium was packed with worried staff members who had watched their stock options lose value over the past few days. I want to address the recent allegations about our financial health, Emma began, standing confidently at the podium. As you've probably seen in this morning's news, the Securities and Exchange Commission has confirmed that the leaked documents were sophisticated forgeries designed to manipulate our stock price. Applause erupted throughout the auditorium. Emma could see relief on faces throughout the crowd. More importantly, the SEC is now investigating the source of these forgeries. We expect criminal charges to be filed soon against whoever created and distributed these fraudulent materials. Emma felt powerful and vindicated. She had weathered Victoria's most vicious attack and emerged stronger than ever. Collins Media has always stood for truth and accountability, Emma continued. When someone tries to destroy our reputation with lies and fabricated evidence, we don't just defend ourselves. We fight back with the full force of legitimate journalism and federal law enforcement. The applause was thunderous. Emma's employees were seeing her as a strong leader who could protect the company against external threats. After the meeting, Emma returned to her office to find Jake waiting with his laptop and an expression she couldn't read. Emma, we need to talk, he said quietly. I've been monitoring social media and news coverage of the SEC announcement. That's great news for us, right? Emma asked, settling behind her desk. Jake's expression remained serious. It should be, but there's something else happening. Someone just posted a video on YouTube that's getting massive attention. Emma felt her stomach tighten. What kind of video? Jake turned his laptop toward her. The screen showed a professionally produced video with the title, The Real Emma Collins, What the Media Won't Tell You. Emma watched in horror as the video began with footage of her college years, showing her at parties, drinking, and behaving like a typical college student. But the editing and narration made everything look excessive and irresponsible. Emma Collins wants you to believe she's a serious business leader, a male voice narrated. But these exclusive videos show the real Emma Collins, a privileged party girl who has never held a real job or faced real consequences for her actions. The video continued with selectively edited clips of Emma's press conferences, making her appear arrogant and entitled. It included interviews with unnamed sources describing her as unstable and vindictive. She's using her family's media empire to attack anyone who questions her qualifications, the narrator continued. This isn't journalism, it's personal revenge with a $12 billion budget. Emma watched the view counter climbing rapidly. The video already had over 200,000 views and was trending on multiple social media platforms. This is devastating, Jake said quietly. Even though it's clearly a hit piece, it's professionally done. and hitting all the right emotional triggers. The comments section is brutal. Emma scrolled through the comments, each one more vicious than the last. People were calling her a spoiled brat, a fake feminist, and worse. The carefully constructed image of competent leadership was crumbling in real time. Jake, this has Victoria's fingerprints all over it. She's escalating again. But how? She's about to face federal charges for the forged documents. Why would she risk making things worse? Emma's phone rang. It was Sarah, her voice tight with panic. Emma, you need to see this. Victoria Sterling just held another press conference. She's denying any involvement in the forged documents and claiming she's being framed by Collins Media as retaliation for criticizing your leadership. Emma felt the world spinning. Victoria was using the SEC investigation to her advantage, positioning herself as the victim of a powerful media company's vindictive campaign. She's claiming that Collins Media created the forged documents themselves, then blamed her to discredit her criticism. Sarah continued, "It's completely insane, but she's got reporters believing it." Emma hung up and stared at Jake. In the span of a few hours, she had gone from victorious to under siege again. Victoria had somehow turned even federal vindication into another weapon against Emma's credibility. This isn't just business warfare anymore, Emma realized. Victoria's trying to destroy me personally, not just professionally. She wants to make sure I can never recover from this. Jake nodded grimly. The question is, what's her endgame? What does she actually want? Emma's phone buzzed with another anonymous text. Enjoying your little victory? Phase 2 begins now. You should have taken the warning seriously. As Emma stared at the message, she realized that Victoria Sterling was more dangerous than she had ever imagined. This wasn't just about Marcus or business competition. This was about total destruction, and Victoria was just getting started. Emma thought she had seen the worst of Victoria's attacks, but the next morning brought a revelation that shattered her remaining illusions about the people she trusted. She arrived at the office to find Jake waiting with Sarah and her grandfather, all wearing expressions of profound concern. Emma, sit down, William said gently. We have something terrible to tell you. Emma's heart raced as she settled into her chair. What now? Another video? More forged documents? Jake opened his laptop and turned it toward her. This is worse. Much worse. The screen showed financial records from Collins Media's accounting system, but these weren't forgeries. These were real internal documents that someone had accessed from within the company itself. Someone with administrative access to our financial systems has been copying sensitive documents for months, Sarah explained, her voice shaking. Bank records, board meeting minutes, executive compensation details, merger discussions, everything. Emma felt cold dread spreading through her chest. You mean we have a mole? Not just any mole, William said grimly. Someone at the highest levels of company leadership. Someone with clearance to access our most confidential information. Jake clicked to another screen showing email records. The documents were being sent to an encrypted account that our IT security team finally managed to trace. Emma, the emails were going directly to Victoria Sterling. Emma stared at the evidence, her mind struggling to process the implications. Someone she trusted, someone with access to the family's most sensitive business information, had been feeding intelligence to her enemy for months. Who? Emma whispered. Who would do this to us? Sarah and Jake exchanged glances. William cleared his throat. The access logs show the documents were copied using Marcus Chen's executive credentials, William said quietly. Emma felt the world stop. Marcus Chen was the company's chief financial officer, a man who had worked for the Collins family for over 15 years. He had been her father's trusted advisor and had helped guide Emma through her transition to leadership. That's impossible, Emma said. Marcus has been with our family since I was a teenager. He's like an uncle to me. I'm sorry, Emma, Jake said gently, but the evidence is conclusive. Marcus has been systematically copying our most sensitive information and sending it to Victoria Sterling. Emma felt betrayed in a way that somehow hurt worse than Marcus Kane's wedding day humiliation. This wasn't a romantic relationship that had soured. This was a man she had considered family, deliberately sabotaging everything her grandfather had built. Why would he do this? Emma asked, her voice breaking. William pulled out another folder. We've discovered that Marcus has significant gambling debts, over $2 million owed to some very dangerous people. Victoria Sterling has been paying off those debts in exchange for corporate intelligence. The cruel mathematics of betrayal became clear. Marcus Chen hadn't just been selling information. He had been selling out Emma's family to protect himself from his own financial mistakes. There's more, Sarah said reluctantly. Victoria has been using this inside information to make strategic investments. She knew about our acquisition plans before we announced them. She knew about our financial challenges before they became public. She's been trading on material inside information for months. Emma stood up and walked to her office windows, looking down at the city below. Everything she thought she knew about the past few months was a lie. Victoria hadn't just gotten lucky with her attacks on Collins Media. She had been receiving detailed intelligence from someone Emma trusted completely. "How long have you known about this?" Emma asked without turning around. "We discovered the security breach yesterday," William replied. "We wanted to investigate thoroughly before presenting the evidence." Emma felt a dark satisfaction building alongside her hurt and anger. This isn't just corporate espionage. Victoria has been committing securities fraud on multiple levels, trading on inside information, manipulating stock prices, conspiring with a corporate officer to breach fiduciary duties. She turned back to face her family and friend. This is enough to send both Victoria and Marcus to federal prison for decades. Jake nodded. "The evidence is overwhelming. We should contact the FBI immediately." But Emma was already thinking beyond simple justice. Victoria Sterling had spent months systematically destroying Emma's reputation, her relationships, and her sense of security. Simply sending her to prison wouldn't repair the damage to Emma's life and career. "No," Emma said quietly. "We're not calling the FBI yet." Sarah looked confused. "Emma, this is criminal activity. We have to report it." "We will report it," Emma replied, her voice hardening. "But first, we're going to use this information strategically." Victoria wanted to play games with inside information? Fine. Let's see how she handles having the game turned against her. William studied his granddaughter carefully. "Emma, what are you planning?" Emma walked to her desk and pulled out a legal pad, beginning to sketch a strategy that would give Victoria Sterling exactly what she deserved. "Victoria has been using Marcus Chen's information to anticipate our moves and counter them," Emma explained. "What if we start feeding Marcus false information? What if we let Victoria think she knows our plans, then do something completely different?" Jake grinned as he understood the implications. "Corporate counterintelligence. Use their own espionage network against them." "Exactly," Emma said. "Victoria thinks she's been playing chess while we've been playing checkers. She's about to discover that we've been playing chess too. We just weren't showing our pieces." Emma felt a cold satisfaction as her plan took shape. Victoria Sterling had betrayed trust, destroyed relationships, and tried to ruin everything Emma cared about. Now it was time for Victoria to learn what real strategic thinking looked like. The final phase of their war was about to begin, and Emma Collins was going to teach Victoria Sterling that some people should never be underestimated. Emma spent the next week carefully orchestrating the most sophisticated corporate deception of her career. Working with Jake and a small team of trusted executives, she created an elaborate fiction designed to exploit Victoria's reliance on stolen inside information. The plan was elegantly simple. Marcus Chen would be fed false information about Collins Media's strategic plans, which he would dutifully pass along to Victoria Sterling. Victoria would make investment decisions based on this intelligence, not knowing she was walking into a carefully constructed trap. "Here's how this works," Emma explained to her inner circle during a secure meeting in her grandfather's private study. "Marcus thinks we're planning to acquire Stream Vision, a struggling video platform company. We've prepared fake board meeting minutes, forged financial projections, and mock legal documents that show we're offering $3 billion for a company that's actually worthless." Jake reviewed the fabricated documents. "These look completely authentic. Marcus will have no reason to suspect they're fake." "Victoria will see this as the perfect opportunity to profit from inside information," Emma continued. "She'll purchase Stream Vision stock before our fake announcement, expecting to make hundreds of millions when the price jumps." Sarah pulled up Stream Vision's stock chart on her laptop. "The company is trading at $12 per share. If Victoria believes we're offering a premium price, she might buy millions of shares expecting them to double or triple in value." William nodded approvingly. And when no acquisition announcement comes, those shares will crash back to their actual value. Victoria will lose everything she invested. Emma felt a dark satisfaction as she imagined Victoria's reaction to discovering she had been outsmarted. But financial losses weren't enough punishment for someone who had tried to destroy Emma's family legacy. That's just the first part, Emma said. While Victoria is focused on the fake acquisition, we're going to expose her real identity and criminal background to every major news outlet in America. Jake opened another folder containing William's original investigation into Victoria Kowalski's fraudulent identity. Birth certificates, court records, photographs. Everything we need to prove she's been operating under a false name for over a decade. The timing has to be perfect, Emma explained. Victoria makes her illegal stock purchase based on our false information. Then we simultaneously expose her identity fraud and her securities violations. She faces federal criminal charges while losing millions on a worthless investment. Emma had also prepared a final surprise that would complete Victoria's destruction. Collins Media's investigative team had uncovered evidence of Victoria's other predatory business practices, including tax evasion and investor fraud. The story would run across all Collins Media platforms, ensuring maximum exposure and public condemnation. On Monday morning, Emma held a fake emergency board meeting to discuss the StreamVision acquisition. Marcus Chen attended via video conference, taking detailed notes as Emma presented fabricated financial analyses and strategic projections. This acquisition represents a transformational opportunity for Collins Media, Emma said, knowing that Marcus was recording every word. StreamVision's content library and user base perfectly complement our existing streaming platforms. The other board members, who knew the meeting was theater, asked appropriate questions about financing and integration challenges. Marcus Chen contributed suggestions about debt structuring and regulatory approval processes, fully convinced he was participating in legitimate corporate planning. After the meeting, Emma watched security cameras as Marcus immediately accessed the company's financial systems to copy the fake documents. Within hours, those materials would be in Victoria Sterling's hands. Hook, line, and sinker, Jake said as they monitored Marcus's activities from Emma's office. Victoria is about to make the biggest mistake of her criminal career. The trap worked perfectly. By Wednesday afternoon, Collins Media's intelligence sources confirmed that Sterling Ventures had purchased over 5 million shares of StreamVision stock at prices ranging from $12 to $15 per share. Victoria had invested nearly $75 million based on Emma's false information. She's completely committed, Sarah reported during their daily strategy meeting. Victoria has borrowed against her other investments to maximize her position. If StreamVision stock crashes, she'll face margin calls that could bankrupt her entire firm. Emma felt no sympathy for Victoria's impending financial disaster. This was justice for someone who had built her career on destroying other people's dreams and innovations. On Thursday morning, Emma activated the final phase of her plan. Collins Media's investigative team published a comprehensive exposé titled The Victoria Sterling Deception: How a Corporate Vulture Built Her Empire on Lies. The story revealed Victoria's real identity as Victoria Kowalski, daughter of a convicted embezzler who had spent 5 years in federal prison for securities fraud. It detailed her systematic use of false credentials to obtain business licenses and investment certifications. Most damaging, it provided evidence of her pattern of predatory business practices, including the destruction of innovative companies and the firing of thousands of employees. The woman who has questioned Emma Collins' qualifications to lead a media company has been operating under a completely fraudulent identity, the article concluded. Victoria Sterling doesn't exist. She's a fiction created by Victoria Kowalski to hide her family's criminal background and her own unethical business practices. The story went viral within hours, shared across social media platforms, and picked up by every major news outlet in America. Victoria's carefully constructed image as a successful venture capitalist crumbled as reporters uncovered additional evidence of fraud and deception. By Friday afternoon, the SEC had opened a formal investigation into Victoria's trading activities. The FBI had issued a warrant for her arrest on charges of identity fraud and securities violations. Sterling Ventures faced regulatory shutdown as investors demanded the return of their money. Emma watched the coverage from her office, feeling a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness. She had successfully defended her family's legacy and exposed a dangerous criminal, but the victory felt hollow. The innocent woman who had walked down the aisle just weeks ago was gone, replaced by someone capable of sophisticated corporate warfare. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Congratulations. You've learned to fight like the rest of us. Welcome to the real world. Emma stared at the message, realizing it might be from Victoria herself. Tomorrow, the police would arrest Victoria Sterling and charge her with multiple federal crimes. Her business empire would collapse, her reputation would be destroyed, and she would likely spend years in federal prison. Justice had been served, but Emma wondered what she had become in the process of achieving it. 6 months later, Emma stood on the balcony of her downtown Chicago penthouse, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. The city looked different now, more complex and nuanced than it had during her quiet years as a museum curator. She had learned that power came with responsibilities she had never imagined. Victoria Sterling, whose real name was Victoria Kowalski, had been sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for identity fraud, securities violations, and conspiracy charges. Her venture capital firm had been dissolved, and she was required to pay over $200 million in restitution to investors and companies she had defrauded. Marcus Chen received a lighter sentence of 2 years for his cooperation with federal investigators, though he would never work in corporate finance again. Emma's phone rang, interrupting her morning meditation. It was Jake, calling from the Collins Media newsroom, where he had accepted a position as senior investigative reporter. Emma, you need to see this morning's ratings, Jake said, his voice filled with excitement. Our documentary series on corporate accountability is the highest-rated program in the network's history. We're getting calls from whistleblowers all over the country who want to share their stories. Emma smiled. The series had been her idea, born from the painful lessons of her conflict with Victoria Sterling. Collins Media was now the most trusted source for exposing corporate fraud and business corruption, using their platform to protect ordinary people from predatory capitalists. That's wonderful news, Emma replied. Any word from the Pulitzer Committee about our investigative reporting? Unofficial sources say we're the frontrunner, Jake said. Your grandfather would be proud. William Collins had suffered another heart attack in December, though this one was genuine. He was recovering slowly but had officially retired, leaving Emma as the undisputed leader of the family media empire. The transition had been smoother than anyone expected, with Emma proving herself as both a capable executive and a principled journalist. Emma's assistant knocked on her office door as she arrived at work. Ms. Collins, you have a visitor. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's personal. Emma's heart stopped when she saw Marcus Kane sitting in her reception area. He looked different than she remembered, thinner and more weathered, wearing a simple button-down shirt instead of his usual expensive suits. Hello, Emma, Marcus said quietly as she approached. Thank you for seeing me. Emma gestured toward her office, unsure what to expect from this encounter. Marcus followed her inside and sat in one of the chairs across from her desk, keeping his hands folded in his lap. I heard about your success with the new programming, Marcus began. The corporate accountability series is important work. Emma studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or ulterior motives, but Marcus seemed genuinely different, humbled in a way that the arrogant entrepreneur she had known would never have allowed. What do you want, Marcus? Emma asked directly. To apologize, he replied simply. I know it's 6 months too late and probably meaningless to you now, but I needed to say it in person. Marcus took a deep breath. I was a fool, Emma. Worse than a fool. I was cruel and shallow and completely blind to what really mattered. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I threw it away for the promise of money and status. Emma felt a familiar ache in her chest, but it was distant now, like an old injury that only hurt in cold weather. I've been working at a nonprofit for the past 4 months, Marcus continued, teaching digital literacy to underserved communities. It doesn't pay much, but it's the first meaningful work I've done in years. Emma was surprised by this revelation. The Marcus she had known would never have considered nonprofit work. Victoria destroyed my company completely, Marcus said. Turned out she was planning to strip our assets from the beginning. All our employees lost their jobs, and our technology was sold to the highest bidder. Emma felt a moment of sympathy, remembering the innocent people who had suffered because of Victoria's predatory practices. "I'm sorry that happened to your team," Emma said sincerely. "They didn't deserve to pay for your poor judgment." Marcus nodded. "I've been trying to help them find new positions. It's the least I can do." They sat in silence for a moment, two people who had once planned to build a life together, now separated by betrayal and time. "Emma, I don't expect forgiveness," Marcus said finally. "I don't deserve it, but I wanted you to know that losing you taught me what real value looks like. Money and status are just numbers on a screen. What we had was irreplaceable, and I was too stupid to understand that." Emma felt tears gathering in her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of closure, of finally understanding that her pain had led to something better. "I'm glad you found meaningful work," Emma said gently. "I hope you're able to help a lot of people." Marcus stood to leave, then turned back. "For what it's worth, I think you're exactly the leader Collins Media needed. Your grandfather was right to trust you with his legacy." After Marcus left, Emma returned to her balcony, thinking about the strange journey that had brought her to this moment. She had started as a naive woman looking for authentic love, been betrayed and humiliated, fought back with everything she had, and emerged as a powerful force for justice and accountability. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Coffee after work? I have news about our next investigation." Emma smiled and typed back, "Of course, the work continues." As she looked out at the city below, Emma realized that she had found something more valuable than the love she had originally sought. She had found her purpose, her voice, and her place in the world. The quiet museum curator was gone, replaced by a woman who used power responsibly and fought for people who couldn't fight for themselves. True wealth, Emma had learned, wasn't measured in stock prices or real estate holdings. It was measured in the positive impact you had on other people's lives. And by that standard, Emma Collins was the richest woman in Chicago. The story ended not with revenge or romantic reunion, but with redemption and the understanding that sometimes the greatest victories come from becoming the person you were meant to be all along. Emma had been left at the altar for a mistress, but she had found something far more valuable than marriage. She had found herself. So there you have it, the incredible true story of how Emma Collins transformed from a heartbroken bride into one of the most powerful media moguls in America. From that devastating moment at the altar to building an empire of accountability journalism, her journey proves that sometimes our greatest betrayals lead to our most extraordinary victories. But here's what I want to know from you. Do you think Emma went too far in her revenge against Victoria Sterling? Was Marcus Kane's apology genuine, or just another calculated move? And most importantly, if you had Emma's resources and someone betrayed you that publicly, what would you have done differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because I read every single one, and some of your insights have actually inspired future stories. If this tale of betrayal, power, and ultimate justice kept you on the edge of your seat, show some love with a like. It seriously helps more people discover these incredible true stories. And if you're hungry for more real-life dramas about love, money, and revenge, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, the stories I've got coming next will make Emma's corporate warfare look like child's play. We're talking international conspiracies, family secrets that destroy dynasties, and plot twists that Hollywood couldn't invent. Until next time, remember, in the game of power and betrayal, the quiet ones are often the most dangerous. See you in the next story.